Uh-oh, do you have sound? Here we go. We're live. Yes, Sam.
Hi, this is Labor Secretary Tom Perez, and I want to talk to you today about a serious safety issue in construction. Year after year, falls are the leading cause of death for workers in this industry. Almost 300 construction workers were killed in falls in 2012. Thousands more were seriously injured. But we have been working with NIOSH on an effort to prevent these deaths and disabling injuries with 3 simple steps. Number 1, plan ahead to get the job done safely. Number 2, provide the right equipment. And number 3, train workers to use the gear safely. Now is the time to focus on this vital safety issue. The economy is on the rebound, housing starts are on the rise, and the summer construction season is getting underway. So as part of our fall prevention campaign, OSHA is launching a national safety stand down to raise awareness about preventing fatal falls. This week-long event from June the 2nd through the 6th will give employers across the country the opportunity to talk to their workers about construction fall hazards and the importance of fall prevention. Here's how you can join our campaign. It's very easy. Set aside a few minutes to stop work, gather up the team, and stand down to discuss fall prevention. After your stand down, come to our website to tell us about it, and you'll receive an official certificate of participation. To find out how you can partner with us for this national stand down, visit osha.gov/stopfallsstanddown. Thank you for your partnership on this issue of life and death in the construction industry.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Harbin. I'm the Deputy Regional Administrator for OSHA in Dallas, Texas. OSHA collectively covers the state of Texas, workers in the state of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and certain workers in the state of New Mexico. This week across the country, employers and workers are voluntarily stopping work to talk about falls in construction and how to prevent them. Thank you for recognizing this vital safety issue by standing down with us today. This week's stand down is part of the OSHA and the Department of Labor's ongoing fall prevention campaign, which was started in 2012 and was developed in partnership with NIOSH, as the Secretary mentioned earlier. Raising awareness about fall hazards and how to stop them is a critical step in protecting workers. This is an important opportunity to review hazards, protective methods, safety policies, goals, and expectations. Among the things that workers can do is what's contained in our fall prevention campaign, and that is train your workers, plan your work, prevent falls by providing the equipment, and train your workers. Fatalities by falls continue to be a leading cause for death for workers in construction. It accounts for about 279 of 806 construction fatalities nationwide in the year 2012. Thousands more workers were seriously injured and disabled. When it comes to falls in construction, cutting corners on safety can result in tragedies for hardworking families. As you see, over 1/3 of all worker deaths in construction in the United States are attributed to falls. Among the top 10 most hazardous industries in the United States, 2 of them are in the construction industry, and those 2 are predominantly related to falls in construction, being roofers and structural iron and steel workers. The fatality rate is over 42 workers per 100,000 in the roofing industry alone. Annually, OSHA releases around October of each year its top 10 cited standards across the country. Unfortunately, falls tend to be related to 4 of those standards cited. This has been fairly consistent throughout the years. 3 simple steps employers and workers can use to make sure that falls do not exist in the construction industry. Plan ahead for the work to be done. Assure that you provide the equipment, the right equipment for the work, and train the workers on how to use the gear safely. One thing to remember is that safety pays and falls cost. You can go to our website, as the Secretary mentioned, www.osha.gov/fall, stop falls, stand down. There's a plethora of information available. If there are not any questions. Thank you. I would like to call up Mr. Jack Rector. He's the area director in Fort Worth, Texas, to the OSHA office. We'll talk about some of the most interesting cases OSHA has investigated.
Working on that.
Good afternoon. As Eric said, I'm the area director of the Fort Worth area office. And today, basically what I got is I have 4 examples of fall inspections to share with you where employees have fallen from a roof. One of those is from the Fort Worth office, where I currently am right now, and then 3 of those are actually from the El Paso office, where I was the area director out there. And I want to talk about those 3 because they were actually kind of significant, because they happened over like a 1-year period of time, and they were all about similar in the issues that was raised on the site. The issues that we actually had on those 3 were so significant that what we actually did was had to issue a press release, actually go out to all the, we wanted to basically notify the fire department or anybody that's going to be up on a roof, including any other roofers or anything like that out there. One of the examples that we're going to have on there today is actually from Fort Worth, is actually an illustration of when a company actually has a very good safety and health program. But in those situations, you have to constantly continue monitoring that, make sure you're implementing the program, make sure you're inspecting the job sites, and make sure you're evaluating the hazard, and you also supervise. If you do not constantly put those practices in place, you may have failures in your system, and sometimes those failures may have extraordinary consequences. In these examples, you will see that there are at least 4 scenarios that will occur from a fall. The best 2 and the worst 2 case scenarios. The best case is that you fall. After you fall, you don't really have any significant injuries. You get up and kind of shake it off. You may have some bruises, some cuts, or something like that. At that point, what you really need to do is probably just stop, go home, go to the first convenience store you see on the way home, and stop and buy yourself a lottery ticket. Because you've actually did something that a lot of people do not walk away from. The second best case is that you fall and you end up with only minor injuries such as broken bones, cuts, bruises, and you only miss a little work during your rehabilitation, and your family only has to take care of you for just a few months. But then they're still going to have to go without the income and the support from you from your actual fall. The third, which is the best of the worst case scenarios, is that you wind up with a broken neck, broken back, major head trauma, and your family must now care for you for the rest of your life. If you really work hard at rehab, then maybe you'll be able to take care of some of your personal needs that you have to take care of. The worst case, of course, is that you take a fall and then you die. Now your family is left without a husband, a wife, a father, or a mother. Your family must now try to move on without you. No money, no future. You never get to see your kids graduate. You never see your grandkids. So please, if you take anything out of this today, make sure what you hear here today, you put into action. You take care of yourself out there on the job site, and you look out for each other. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start looking at the sites that we have here, or the inspections. Basically what you have here is you have an accident that we investigated May 23rd, 2013. Company installing glass roof panels. All they had up there was these roof panels and everything like that. The company put together a very good safety and health program. And basically what it is, you have 14 employees up on the roof, including the foreman. And what we had was we had one employee fall 22 feet. He landed on the concrete below. He was in a coma for several months. Numerous broken bones, fractured skull, and is now disabled. The company had a program in place which was a 100% fall protection program while they were actually in the installation area. So what had happened in this situation was it actually had plywood over the holes where they were actually installing the glass. One employee had actually walked outside that area. So basically what he did was he unhooked when he walked outside there and went to go do whatever he was going to do. Well, after he had left that area, nobody else knew how to put the plywood back down there to where it was actually secure enough for anybody to even walk around out there. So what did they do? Inspection findings found that what had actually happened after the employee had actually walked out away from the area, he was called back by the foreman. And so basically, since the warning line that they had up there was only about 3 feet up off the ground, all it was they just had to step over or step back. And so there was actually nothing that was actually going to stop them from actually walking in there or notify them that they actually had to tie back off. So this employee actually, after he walked out, he started walking back in. He just stepped over the area to walk right back in there, and he forgot to tie off. Foreman was standing there watching him. The foreman didn't say anything. The employees were used to stepping over that tied area, except this time the employee didn't tie off. The employee stepped on the plywood that they were trying to secure. And at that time, he fell to 22 feet. So basically what we had citations that were issued to the company. We had a 502 F1I, which was for warning line, not erected 6 feet from the roof edge. We had a 502 F2, Double I, which is the rope, wire, or chain on rig, so lowest point was not less than 34 inches from the walking working surface. And we also had a monitor up there, but the monitor had other duties to do besides actually watching what the employees were doing. We have a few pictures here. This is basically what it looked like up on the roof. You can kind of see where the warning line is, which was about 13 inches up off the working surface. And you can also see that there was actually some other encumbrances up there, which actually were about the same height. So they were used to stepping over those. And this is the plywood that they actually had up there that they were installing to put over the holes before they actually installed the glass. And you can see right here, this is where the employee fell. Fell through the glass and fell through the concrete below. And again, luckily, he just had some cuts, bruises, or he actually he went into a coma. And so actually, I mean, he survived the fall, but he is right now in rehabilitation. So what you have right there is you have the third case scenario, which is the worst of the best. Our next one we're going to talk about is the ones from El Paso. You can kind of see here that the inspections took place from May 14, 2010 to May 8, 2011. So we actually had about a 1-year period there. We had 3 of these falls that took place. The first one was we had a referral which was investigated May 14, 2010, which the company was up performing roofing work. 6 employees on site. 1 employee fell through the roof 30 feet. He landed on some toner resin bags and received broken ribs. This right here is probably your second best scenario, which is he just fell, he broke some bones, but he's actually being able to move around and do whatever he needed to do. The inspection findings was the roof deck was rotted through in several places. What had happened was the company didn't inspect the roof for structural integrity, no fall protection was being used, and they did not cover up the skylights. The citations issued in this case was a 501A2, which requisite strength and structural integrity of the roof, 501B4I, which was fall protection for holes, and then 503A1, which was for training. You can see here, we're actually in fall right through the roof, and you can kind of see up here on the top where he had actually fallen through, and you can see where it was actually kind of rotted. That's what the hole looked like up on the top. Basically what you had was just it was rotting out up there, rusting, and they didn't rot there. They could have walked up underneath this and looked to actually make sure that the roof was actually going to support their weight up there. Our second case involved a fatality investigation, August 25th, 2010. Company performing roofing work. This is your worst case scenario, by actually times 2 in this case. 2 employees were on site, a father and a stepdaughter. They were working up on the roof. The stepdaughter fell through a hole 25 to 30 feet. She landed on the concrete below. Needless to say, she did not survive. So in this situation, how is it that you, as your stepfather, now you've got to go tell that mother that her daughter has passed away on the job site? Inspection findings. The roof deck was rotted through in several places. The company did not inspect the roof for structural integrity. The fall protection was not in use, and unguarded skylights. Citations of 501A2 represent strength of structures of the roof, fall protection for the holes, and then the training. You can see here where she actually fell through. And that's what the roof looked like on this one. Our final one is actually a referral investigation. It was May 4th, 2011. Company performing roofing work and repair on a school. And this is actually your best case scenario right here. The employees were on site. The employee fell through the roof 14 feet onto a table in the teacher's lounge because they were working at the school. And all he did was he just suffered some minor injuries. But again, we had where they fell through the roof. Inspection findings were almost exactly the same. Roof rotted in deck through several places. The company did not inspect for structural integrity of the roof. Fall protection was not in use. 501A2, requisite strength and structural integrity of the roof was issued. 501B10 for fall protection, and 503A1 for the training. And you can kind of see off those last three right there that they were actually all the same. And so we didn't know if we were actually running into like a trend out there, if this was just going to be something that we were going to find a lot more of. So that's why we went ahead and issued the press release to actually let everybody know, hey, you need to go up underneath there and actually inspect those roofs before you get up there. You can see here, this is actually the teacher's lounge where he was at. There was a table over there in the corner. This is actually taken up in through that false ceiling up there where you can actually see up there into the top. And you can see the rest of the roof here is actually what it looked like up underneath there. The rest of it's starting to rust out also. With that, do I have any questions? Anybody?
Jack?
Yes, sir.
Did your people, when you were on top of the roof, was there any visible damage on the top of the roof? Because it looked like the roofs had insulation and things that would obscure you being able to actually see, the roof members themselves.
And my employees did actually not get up on the roof because there again, we're not going to go up there because we don't know what the condition of the roof is. The only thing I can sit there and show you on these is that actually from below, where any of them have that opportunity to go look, if whoever was actually inspecting the job site were actually going out and bidding the job, then they could have walked in when they were looking around, they could have probably actually seen that. Any other questions? Well, again, I want everybody to make sure if you're out there working in the construction industry, you're exposed to a fall, you need to make sure you protect yourself. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Now with us, I have Shane Morrow, the Loss Prevention Director from Balfour Beatty Construction. And Shane, your resume was so long, I cut it down to 5 minutes long so that I could read this for you. But to introduce you to the rest of the people here in the room with us and also tuning in nationwide. Shane has more than 23 years of construction industry experience. He has overseen the safety programs for a wide range of projects, including large base building and interiors for healthcare, hospitality, multifamily residential, corporate office, and public assembly facilities. As Loss Prevention Director, Shane supports the construction project team in the implementation of site-specific accident prevention programs, including compliance with state and federal regulations. He performs site safety inspections and conducts safety training for employees and trade partners. So welcome, Shane Morrow.
All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the history of where construction came from and kind of where we started with fall protection, just a little bit, and then we'll kind of get into what kind of systems are out there and available today. Because what's available should mitigate most risk that we have. Looking into a roof membrane before you go bid a job is a little bit different. But if we're out there on a project and we're building it, there's several opportunities to use fall protection and several different systems for it. Whenever I came into the construction industry, the fall protection that was allowed for me, or at the time was available, was a body harness, or actually a waist belt, and a rope lanyard. That, if you fell in that and fell in the wrong way, potentially you could break your back. So today we have full body harnesses, we have self-retracting lifelines, we have shock packs built into lanyards. We have all kinds of equipment that we can use to prevent the injury in the event that you do fall and you do suffer an arresting fall. So, and then also we're going to talk about eliminating risk. we have a big campaign right now to try to remove the risk from the employees. And there's several ways you can do that. We've got some slides to talk about it. Reducing risk, fall rescue training, fall protection opportunities, and opportunities for improvement and making a difference. So we have prevention, and then prevention, you also have engineering and administrative controls. Prevention is like guardrails, warning lines, controlled access systems. Protection would be PPE controls, and these are the things like fall arrest and safety nets. And I don't know if anyone has used safety nets yet to arrest falls, but we do use them as a preventative measure for dropping material, but have not seen them used in the industry. I'm not saying that they're not used, but that's kind of the last resort, in my opinion. So here's something that we've come up with a solution here for pinning the ductwork to attach the insulation. The gentleman has come up with a piece of PVC pipe, and he's able to stick his pins on there this way, which eliminates the need for a ladder. Tools that reduce the risk, like a giraffe here. This allows an individual to stand on the working floor, raise the grinder up to the ceiling without ever having to get on the ladder or a scaffold or anything else. So we've reduced risk by allowing the guy to stay on the ground and avoid working at height. Some opportunities here are platform ladders. Platform ladders come with handrails, and they also come with a platform to stand on. It gives a person more security whenever working. This might be another opportunity to reduce from risk of falls when we're working at height. Whenever we do have people working at height, an opportunity for us also is to, if an individual has fallen, we have to save them. And in that, a worker that has fallen is probably unconscious or can be severely injured, not able to help rescue himself. And in that, we've got to respond within minutes. Just a few minutes makes a big difference on saving an individual. So what we did on the project, and this is kind of unique, we filled a 5-gallon bucket full of concrete, put an eye bolt in it, and then attached it to one of the straps, the fall protection straps that were cast in place. We threw it off the side of the building there, inside the elevator shaft, and we had the workers retrieve the bucket. And the reason we want them to do that is because in fall protection, you've only got a few minutes to save a person that is suspended by their fall protection before they suffer injuries like blood pooling and other things related. There's some opportunities. We built some perimeter protection design into the soil retention system. So this is what Jack was talking about, pre-planning. This speaks specifically to that. It's an opportunity for all of us to look at our projects and think about how we're going to expose or we're going to control the hazards on the job site and how we're going to keep our employees safe. So one of the things that we've done right here is that we've incorporated the fall protection in the soil retention system. The posts are painted yellow to identify them. That's the excavation perimeter. And then also the cable has red flagging on it. So it may sound pretty simple, but it really came out very well. And we're proud of the look, and we're also proud of the protection we provided our folks. Something else we've been able to do, we've been using metal guardrail panels, and the reason we're doing that, several reasons, and one of them is that typically when we build guardrails out of wood, we're typically build them, they get torn up, and then we wind up throwing the wood in the dumpster. And here's another opportunity to provide protection for folks, but also be eco-friendly. I think it makes good business sense. Here's an opportunity here where we've got the guardrail panels set up on the mezzanine level of the hotel. And You also see them down here where the escalator is going to come through the slab, and then also at the building perimeter. Those are great systems. It's not the only answer, but it's definitely an answer or prevention to keep people from falling. All right, this next slide, we've got cantilever debris netting, and the debris netting is very crucial for us when we're building projects. The potential to drop something on somebody around the building is very, very high. So today, in today's day and age, with the speed at which we have to build, we really have to incorporate a lot of systems into the build of the job. So in this, we pre-planned cantilever debris netting around the perimeter. You'll see it's missing right here and here. That's due to the fact that the landing platform for material storage or the material that's for the forming operation leaving, and then you'll see it stops here because we're about to raise the elevator up a little bit. So it has some limitations. To help with that, we also asked our forming contractor on the guardrail system that's on the formwork to put debris netting up and around there. And this is just falling material for sure, but it also gives you another sense of security when you're up on those elevated decks and you're looking at, you're looking at 200, 300 feet down, and what safety measures are in place. It makes you feel a lot better. Now, there are some opportunities where we still use the wood guardrail systems, and sometimes you have to use signage to let people know what the actual hazard is. So right here you see the confined space. It's a great place to stick your signage, but also if you build the guardrails, I want to emphasize how we build them. It needs to look professional. If it looks professional, it will have the effect that we want. I've seen guardrails built before that look like if you leaned on them, they'd fall down. That's not the intent. It is to save people, keep people inside the building footprint, and eliminate the fall hazard. Here we have the metal guardrail panels, and this is probably one of the scariest places for me on the job site. And the reason I say that is because in the elevator shaft area, we have a lot of work. What we still have going on up top is we still have the construction of the building. So we have formwork up top, and then we have these open shafts all the way from every floor, all the way from the basement, all the way to the forming area. And what typically happens, because the speed of the build is much faster than what it used to be, we have to have people in the elevator shafts working at times. So what we have done, and you can see in the photo, is that we have cantilevered out platforms in there that provide a level of protection for material drop. And then we've also sectioned off the primary area for entry by wood guardrails, and then we also sectioned it off with the metal panels here. What that's done is given us several levels of protection. Inevitably, you find people that want to get into the elevator shaft area. For me, that's scary again, because if a guy drops, he could drop 300, 400 feet pretty easily. 6 feet, 7 feet, 10 feet would be too much for me. So this is something that's, we looked at it and we thought, you know what, we need to come up with a schedule of work activities. When can we work people in the elevator shaft when they're not moving the forms and when they're tied to the structure soundly? So we came up with a schedule, and no one was allowed in the elevator shafts unless it was verified that there was protection in between them and any work above them, so that we didn't have dropping material, which is related to falls. And then also periodically we would put the platforms to eliminate the straight fall of 300 or 400 feet. Something that we've done with these metal panels, and again, I keep talking about these, but they're very easy to use and they have a lot of benefit. And here's the benefit that I see, is that we had on several levels where we couldn't get scissor lifts onto the floors because the structural capacity of the floor wouldn't allow it. So we had guys that were on stilts, and stilts provide also another fall risk if the guardrail's 42 inches and the guy's on stilts and he's up there 3 or 4 feet, he's over top of the guardrail. So the potential is to go over the guardrail off the side of the building, whether inside the building or out, because we have holes for stairs, elevators, mechanical shafts, and then we also have the perimeter, which they fall all the way off the building. And we were concerned with that, so we took the manufacturer to task, and we wanted to know if these panels would hold. They're rated for 300 pounds, so we stacked them and asked them if we could stack them on top of each other, so we could use that to allow the guys to use their stilts and still maintain fall protection for the folks while they were working. And it worked very well. These set up very easily, and really the contractor came back to us and thanked us just for providing that level of protection. But the real message was that it was so easy to set up that they took it on their own and did it themselves and was successful in their job. You'll see that on our hoists, we fully wall the area around the hoist, and we limit the amount of space in between the door and the car. And the reason for that is that somebody potentially could get in between the car door and the door leading into the building, and we wouldn't want somebody just standing in there, because if you allow enough space, somebody can potentially just stand in there when the car is passing. So we've kind of eliminated that. Another thing is you'll see the metal guardrail panels sitting up to the sides, and then we've got a landing platform right here, and we use those panels to provide protection for that as well. When we were talking earlier about pre-planning, this is something that is an understatement. Planning for safety and construction, because we build so fast these days, is so crucial that if you don't plan for it until it's time to do that activity or perform that scope, you're going to be behind. And so what you've got to do up front before you ever get started is look at all the hazards that exist within the building and come up with a plan. These guardrail systems that are on this building right now, that probably took a carpenter crew at least a week to build, just in this one area. So looking at the time and trying to get the people up to the elevated area safely, you've got to plan that stuff into your day. Now I want to share a story right here. This is just a hole cover, and we talked about hole covers earlier. In 2006, I was on a job, and we had a guy that was new to construction. He was new. He was about 9 days in the United States, and he was probably 6 or 7 days on the job. And I didn't know the guy existed. At that point in time, we didn't have a new worker or at-risk worker program. So what happened with this individual was that we had some hole covers on the second floor of this building. Fortunate for him, underneath that building on the first floor, the owners didn't know what they wanted to put in this retail area. So all you had underneath of it was compacted dirt, but a grade beam running all the way around the perimeter. His foreman told him to pick up all the plywood on the project. This guy is making, I don't know how much money an hour, but he feels like he's making good money for his family, and he doesn't want to let anybody down, so he goes pick up the plywood, and he's picking it up, and then he goes to this other piece that has hole written on top of it. It's cleated so that it doesn't get misplaced or displaced, and he picks it up and walks forward and falls 19.5 feet down to the dirt below. What happens is he winds up breaking his pelvis, his elbow, and his wrist. When I went out there and saw him, his head was about 6 inches away from the concrete grade beam, which to me spelled disaster had he been 6 inches over. In that moment, we for sure got him help and made sure everybody was clear. We protected the area and resolved the hazard. But we also had to take some time and start thinking about how it happened and why it happened. It had a hole written on it, but whenever I looked at it from a distance, the plywood cover didn't look like anything other than the plywood decking they use on the formwork. So really the guy looked at it and he probably didn't see what it said, and he picked up the plywood thinking it was decking, and he threw it in the dumpster. It was going to. So we came up with this plan to paint the plywood yellow and then put some black stripes on it. It's not the only answer. It is very functional. You can tell when you walk on a job that plywood is different from any other, and there must be a reason because it's painted and it has certain things. What we wind up having is that sometimes the mechanical guys, if they put these plywood pieces down and they just bang 16-penny nails into the concrete slab, the mechanical guys, the plumbing guys, the electrical guys can't pull them out and can't reinsert them. So what we started doing was using tap cons to put them in, secure them, and then we asked then at that point that if anybody was going to remove a whole cover or a guardrail, they had to ask permission first, and then at that point they needed to tell us what they were going to be doing, how they were going to do it, how long it was going to take them to do it, and then how they were going to protect themselves and anybody else. So that kind of controlled the situation. And from that point forward, the jobs that I've had, I've not had any more people fall through holes. I don't know if you've been in this situation before, but you kind of look internally and you feel like that you might have missed the boat, you might not have done all that you should have. But since we've had the success, I feel a lot better about it. There's several different ways, and we'll get into protecting people from falling through holes. Here's an opportunity. This is not the only answer, the only way to use mesh, but here's an opportunity. They formed up this sleeve, and this is another system that looks similar, but this object right here, we're going to see this appear right here. This is what it looked like whenever they placed the sleeve, they placed the concrete, and then they ripped out the sleeve. They had this mesh inside the hole to prevent somebody from falling. That's another opportunity. I still like the hole cover on top of it, but that's good planning. And again, if you don't plan, you're going to fall behind quickly in this business because of the speed at which we have to build. Vertical netting is something that we've used several times and we're going to continue to use because it provides so many benefits. Falling debris, we can do our work inside the building whenever we've got the mesh up. So you can see we can use it on multiple floors, and we can continue to do our business inside the building and provide protection for employees from falling out and also debris falling out and hitting somebody below. See the shoring? This is something that's not an employee ship falling, but it's definitely an object falling. What I'm looking at is here is the shoring. It's been tied back to eliminate the event that if it comes undone from the structure, that it wouldn't fall out outside the building and hit someone. Here's an opportunity that we've got the mesh in place, but we've also got a cast in place strap to tie off to. That again is a lot of pre-planning and a lot of opportunities for somebody to work safely up there, because typically when a guy goes up, he doesn't have a hammer drill to drill a hole and something else to put an anchor in, and he has to do that every place he has to work. So try and step out there and get in front and try to eliminate the barriers from working safe. This is also another opportunity to get mesh underneath the formwork. I call this stick framing a little bit. What happens is you've got to put your aluminum beams out, and then you've got gaps in the formwork where a guy could potentially fall, or a piece of equipment or some of that material could fall. So they put the nets underneath of it. Again, that's forward thinking, knowing that gravity exists and it affects everything we touch, including us. We have to eliminate the potential for something falling. Fall protection is as simple as ABC. A is an anchorage point. B, rated at 5,000 pounds. B is a body harness. What I said earlier is I wore a body belt whenever I started in the business. Now you have a body harness, and it's a full body harness. It almost looks like something you'd use if you were parachuting. And here's something I want to challenge all of us on, and I keep seeing this, I keep hearing this from some people, is that they don't know how they're going to be able to tie off at the base, at the ceiling, when their lanyard's 6 feet long and then they're 5 feet or or so to their D-ring, and it's a 13-foot floor, and they're working on their ladder and they're tied off. They ask, how am I going to not hit the floor? Well, my response is, why don't we start trying to use this self-retracting lifelines that stop our fall descent in 2 feet? Here's a system that's out there on the market today that's an opportunity to tie people off to. You see that they've set it up in place. They've got this arm cantilevered out, and they've got their self-retracting lifelines tied to it. You can grab the hook, put it to your D-ring, step across into the fall zone, and you're protected. Here's another system where they've taken a horizontal lifeline and wrapped it around the rebar coming out from the termination of the column, and wrapped it and tied it off to the other end, another column. Vertical lifelines used to access work platforms is a very good way. It's a lot of good planning involved. They've got to climb that. In the event that they fall off the scaffolding, they could potentially, they could save themselves just by being tied off to the rig. Cast in place concrete straps, we're using those a lot these days, and potentially more so here in the future. Here again is somebody that's looking out in front. They've got their system placed into the columns, and then they've got them fastened on the end. They've got horizontal systems where they can build their formwork. They've got a lot of good fall protection practices out there that I've seen, and your contractor's pretty smart when you challenge them with a problem. Sometimes they come up with a really good solution, and a lot of these forming contractors have good plans. The opportunities within the business, and we'll pan to this picture right here, and I want you to look at it. These guys have an engineered system. The concrete straps have been put in place. They're tied off, and they believe they're doing the right thing. The problem with this is that the system's not made to have a knot in the rope, and it's not made to have sag like that. We have a contractor that bought them the equipment, but we really didn't teach them the right way to use it. So that's what I see a lot, and the opportunity for us is to see those individuals and call that out, and we have to facilitate change, and in that we have to be proactive in engaging in conversation. Sometimes it's uncomfortable conversation, but we have to push people into considering what we're doing today may not necessarily be as good as what it once was when we started doing it. As an industry, we must identify our hazards associated with our scope, and that means each contractor has a specific scope of work that they have to do. Now in that, I think we all have to identify our hazards. We have to understand what are we putting our folks up into. Understand the level of risk, because everything has risk. There's varying levels. Train our workforce accordingly. And this one right here is something that I'm not seeing a lot. There's a lot of good contractors that do train their people, and they do train to fluency, but there's some that don't. They just give them a one-time training, and they give them the equipment, and then they expect them to do the right thing. That's a fallacy, and we've got to correct that if we're ever going to get past some of these things. The next thing, and this is the one thing that's typically skipped, is verified training is effective. Again, we train them once, we give them the equipment, and then we turn them loose and we don't go check them. We need to inspect what we expect. And that's huge for all of us. If you're managing people, if you're managing people out in the workforce, if you don't tell people what you want them to do, show people what you want them to do, check up on them, making sure that they're doing what you want, and then at the end of the day, you have no right to expect that they did what you wanted. If you've been in business or been a manager long enough, you'll know that to be true, because if you don't do those steps, every time you'll come at the end of the day and you won't get what you thought you had or wanted. Falls can be prevented. Resources are available. Reach out when you need help, and let's make a difference. That's my time.
Other than the engineering controls, what kind of, how can we change the behavior of our workers?
That's a trick because in the industry, what is common is that changing the behavior means running the guy off. It means when you find somebody that's doing something wrong, you typically chastise them and then you remove them from the project either 1 day, 3 days, or completely. And in changing behavior, we have to look a little bit internally and understand what our role is and what actually are we responsible for. If you're a leadership type person and you've got people that are working on the job site, you've got to identify the hazards that are out there. In that, you've also got to go to the contractors and the employees that are working for you and understand if they know what's out there. So for me, I think changing the way we talk to people is huge. I think understanding that we have to play more of a proactive role in initiating change is another big step, and it's uncomfortable sometimes. I think we've all got to look at ourselves and say, hey, are we doing the right thing? Once you've been through a few of these injuries or even investigated a fatality, you kind of understand what the family goes through of the injured employee, what your team out on the job site feels at the time of the injury or fatality even. And you've got to understand that right there is something to fight against. And how you fight against it is you change the atmosphere out on the job to where people can't ask questions. And proactive planning is the best way to get around most all of this. You got to sow the right culture into your job site. You've got to be a person that is approachable and reacts in a way that people are drawn to you rather than pushing them away. Because if you can't get to that point, we're never going to change the industry. Anybody else?
Well, thanks, Shane. We're a few minutes ahead of schedule. We're going to be taking a break here in a few minutes. I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank some folks for making this happen. First of all, to our Dallas OSHA Regional Office and the representatives here, thank you so much for making the call. Judy, where are you? And getting us and you together to make this happen. Also, Jack Rector from the Fort Worth area office. Thank you, Jack. I'd also like to thank the staff at the OSHA Ed Center here at UT Arlington, pulling it together in 2 weeks and making it happen, streaming live all across the country. As a matter of fact, probably the world. All it takes now is a click on your mouse and you're there. But thank you to the staff for making this happen. Also to the great staff here at the Mavericks Activity Center in UT Arlington for their part in making this facility available for us. Also to our IT department and the people that put on the actual broadcast for us and make all of those funny electronic synapses happen so that it all comes off without a hitch. I appreciate everybody's help. By the way, so you know who I am. I'm Matt Kerr, the director of the OSHA Education Center here at UT Arlington. And with that, we're going to take a short 10-minute break and let the folks here in the audience stretch their legs and have some refreshments. Also down front, in front of the stage, we have some great takeaways for everyone with some handouts and so on to help facilitate the stand down this week and into the future. And for those of you at home, you can run away from your computer screens and go do whatever it is you need to do. And I will see you in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
There's some cookies and water down front if any of you would like some.
Take you up on the water part.
No picnic, sorry.
Yeah, I am.
I know, I thought some chicken and bread.
I thought about like.
I think I'm gonna go a little higher.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so the video. You're gonna bring it? Bring it on. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, you got it trained.
Yeah, after the first one. So, like, I like yeah. Really? Good to know.
Sure, thanks. You can put it, if you would, just put it up there.
Hey Tanner, you do me a favor and stand there again just for a second? Hey girl, I didn't see you. When'd you get here?
I stuck you behind you while you were working hard.
Don't you be sneaking behind me now.
I did. I started to do the bunny ear thing. I thought, no,
You do
he
it.
was busy. Oh, looky there.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, you can get down there. Shadow was starting to bug me real bad.
Shadows are bad. So I parked and I parked 30.
Oh, we got it. We got all that taken care of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I sent them the request Friday.
Please take your seats, Dan. Ready to go? All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice break. My part of the presentation is going to focus right now on just what can we do in a stand down. A lot of people ask me all the time, what's a stand down? I think that's been well explained. But a lot of people get hung up then on what to do next. The subject of my talk is just a general fall prevention, but that's pretty much the subject of all week. But what I'm basically going to do is lay out a typical training session, I guess you could say, where you can take 15, 20, 30 different PowerPoint slides, which are available just about from anywhere, or make it yourself, and present it in about 15 minutes over coffee and donuts, or during break time, or like in this week, during the actual stand-down session that you're going to hold. So let's go through this, and then I'll take any questions afterwards. First of all, when you set up any kind of a training session, you want to take a look at what's your ultimate goal of the training session, and we call this, in my world, the terminal learning objective. That's a big $9 phrase, which basically means, what's your overall goal? What are you trying to get out of this particular session? So in this particular session, you can say something like this. Upon completion of this module, participants will understand the working conditions that prompt use of fall protection and options that are available to protect workers from falls. Fairly general, right? But most goals are, as far as the terminal learning objective, it's the big overall goal. Then we can break that down into smaller chunks and basically eat that elephant one bite at a time. So what do we have next? We call these the enabling learning objectives. Now these ELOs basically take your presentation and break it down into chunks so that the participants, the workers, the students can see what the roadmap is for that training session that is about to happen. They kind of anticipate now where they want to go. This is especially essential when we're talking about adult learners. Adult learners don't want to be sitting in the seat and not have a clue about what's coming next. You need to tell them what's coming next, and that's what the ELOs actually do. So let's take a look. We will list at least 3 methods of fall protection available for protected workers. We will state the main criteria that prompts use of fall protection for workers. We will discuss the best work practices needed to prevent falls, and we will describe the components of a well-designed training program. So 4 main enabling learning objectives that will get us ultimately to that terminal learning objective, that ultimate goal. All right, then what do? We start to actually kind of flesh out those ELOs. We start with just some basic facts to kind of get the ball rolling and get everybody's mind going in the same direction. So let's take a look at it. Falls are the leading causes of death in the construction industry. And what are we doing here today? And what are we doing here all week across this country during this stand down? Ultimately, we're trying to save lives. We're holding training sessions, we've got lots of handouts and brochures and posters up, and everybody is talking about it, but what is the ultimate reason why we're even here? It's that first one. We're here to save lives, and if we can just save one life, it's been worth all of the effort, all today, all this week, all for the rest of our time to save that one life. That's the real reason why we're doing this. Most fatalities occur when employees fall from open-sided floors and through floor openings. Falls from as little as 4 to 6 feet can cause serious lost time accidents and sometimes, yeah, even death. Open-sided floors and platforms of 6 feet or more in height must be guarded. Again, I go back to one of the photos that Shane showed us, where people were trying to use fall protection. They had a horizontal lifeline, a slack one. We had a full body harness, we have a lanyard, and so on. He was up on a ladder, and what did we see? A sagging horizontal lifeline and probably a 6-foot shock absorbing lanyard attached to the harness. But He was up a ladder. Did you notice, did anybody kind of do the math in their head that if he fell, he'd still hit the ground? And look at that bullet there. It falls from as little as 4 to 6 feet. Well, he was about 6 or 7 feet up a 10-foot step ladder. So he, wearing all this fall protection, thinking he was protected, he could still have hit the ground. So even the small falls, the short falls, still can hurt. Off of this platform that I'm standing on, maybe off of something even shorter than that. Okay, let's take a look at our fall protection options. We have personal fall arrest system, guardrails, safety nets. These aren't the only options, but we call these the big three. One of these actually is an engineering control that would prevent the fall in the first place. That's the middle one, the guardrail system. The safety net on the right would prevent you from hitting the ground if installed properly, but the fall has already occurred. And when you hit a safety net after falling about 30 feet, that might hurt somewhat as well. Maybe even cause an injury or two. On the left, we have the personal fall arrest system. Shane went over that very well with a full body harness, the lanyard, and an anchorage point. The ABCs of fall protection. But what has happened already? The fall has already occurred. And with a personal fall arrest system, now you have your worker hanging in the harness that just saved his life, could now actually kill him. Shane mentioned some of the problems with hanging in your harness too long. Orthostatic trauma is one of the big ones that we talk about in class. So we need to get to those people fast. You have to have rescue teams available somewhere that you've identified in your planning process so that we can get those high-angle rescue teams to that person in a short amount of time and bring that person safely down. But again, it saved your life, and now what's happening is threatening your life as well. So of the three here, I think we would all agree, guardrail systems of these three would be the method of choice because it truly does prevent the fall in the first place. Shane talked a lot about planning as well. There are two instances out there in the world that I think some of us have known, tried, want to try, maybe have played, and that's scuba diving and football. Okay, now we're in a big football state, so I'll leave that for a second. But scuba diving, that's practiced by quite a few people actually here in Texas. We have dive shops right here locally. One of the things that we say in scuba diving is this mantra we recite, is plan your dive and dive your plan. Scuba divers, both recreationally as well as commercially, exist in a very hostile environment. And when they're down there 120, 130 feet, yes, even recreational divers go that far, you're not just one breath from the surface, you're quite a bit farther than that. Surfacing when problems happen is not an option. That's another thing we say when we're scuba diving. Surfacing is not an option, you take care of it down below. So we want to eliminate those hazards. We want to prevent those hazards. And how do we do it? With good planning. Okay, you see where I'm going here. Football, big football state in Texas, and I'm sure that even there are some high school teams that could beat some of the college teams where I'm from. At least their stadiums could beat our old stadiums where I'm from. But football is another great example. Would you ever go into a football game without a game plan? I mean, that just, it goes with it, doesn't it? We've all heard it. What's your game plan? They research the opposing team. They find out where their weaknesses are, where their strengths are, and how we can actually do proper matchups against their people, against their defenses they'll throw against us, again, against their offenses that it'll throw against us, and come up with a good game plan in order to what? Play the game for 1 hour on a Friday night? All that planning that goes into that for 1 hour on Friday night kind of reminds me of a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Has to do more probably with preparation, planning, and training than any other quote I've heard. Some of you might remember it. It's the quote about chopping a tree down. And he said one day, If they gave them 6 hours to chop a tree down, I would take 5 of those hours to sharpen the axe. What is that? That's planning, that's preparation, even training, and then get to the point where you're actually chopping the tree down. So, planning is the most critical component of fall protection. With good planning, we will eliminate falls from happening. Fall protection systems and work practices must be in place before we start work. Now, there are some situations with scaffolding where scaffolding is being erected, fall protection systems may not be in place. Is there a safe way to erect scaffolding? Absolutely. I've seen it done. I've seen people erect scaffolding with absolutely no risk of falling at all. Personal fall arrest systems, again, you must be trained to properly use PFAS. And of course, to review what Shane said before, what is a PFAS? It's your anchor point, it's your lifeline, and it's your full body harness. Remember about your anchorages, 5,000 pounds, and that's per worker. Now, generally speaking, if we get single point anchorages and one person's on there, that's 5,000 pounds, that's not a problem. Where people start to go past that limit is when we have multiple workers on the same lifeline attached to the same anchor point. Remember that every anchor point, everyone on each side, let's say of a horizontal lifeline, has to be rated at 5,000 pounds per worker that may be on that line. So always remember, anchor points, 5,000 pounds per worker. Guardrails. We have top rail, we have mid rail, and sometimes if necessary, we even have toe board. Top rails are always going to be about 42 inches plus or minus 3, so 39 to 45 inches. Toe boards in this example, or in all examples, should be at least 3.5 inches high. But how strong should that top rail be? 200-pound force. How about the mid rail? 150-pound force. So will it support a forklift crashing through it? No. Will it support that worker who suddenly gets off balance and accidentally leans into it? It should. Safety nets, again, will catch you from hitting the ground, but again, the fall has already happened. Place as close as possible, but no more than 30 feet below where employees work. In your regulations, if you look it up, there is a nice table that says, okay, how far out does it have to be from the edge of the point where the employee could fall? It depends on how far down the net is going to be. So check the table always. Make sure that you're actually positioning any safety nets according to that table. Distance out and distance down. All right, so where's fall protection needed? A lot of people know, oh, well, they're on the roof, they need fall protection, but they forget about other stuff. Walkways and ramps, open-sided and edges, holes, concrete forms of rebar, excavations, roofs, wall openings, brick laying, and residential construction. All of these are cases. Could you just basically say anytime you're working at height, you should be thinking fall protection? Okay, define working at height. Well, for me, it's anytime my feet are not on the solid ground. Anything else for me is working at height. Now, it may be that I'm only working 1 or 2 feet off the ground. I'm up on a small step ladder or some kind of a shelf next to a particular loading dock, something of that nature. Am I still thinking about the fall protection? Yes, I am. Because remember, even a small fall like that can result in a major injury. Walkways and ramps, guard ramps, runways, and other walkways. You can see here the top rail here as well as the mid rail, and in this case they do have toe boards here. They must have someone actually working below. That's why the toe board is usually needed. If something could be kicked off of the ramp or off of that working surface onto workers below, You have to have that tow board there to prevent that debris from getting kicked off. Debris including things like sledgehammers. Residential construction. In residential construction, you must be protected if you can fall more than 6 feet. Is this guy more than 6 feet up? Yes, he is. We should be protecting him. What's the best form of protection in this particular case? I would say, yeah, you're right, guardrail system. Now, a lot of people say, oh, it takes too much time and effort and cost to put up these guardrail systems. No. If you've done any research lately, there are so many products on the market now for temporary guardrail systems that are easy to assemble, disassemble, and they're very good as far as the way they've been engineered to provide for safety. Unprotected sides and edges must have guardrails or equivalent. Here's an improper guarding. That's a 1/4 inch nylon rope. Would you trust your life to a 1/4 inch nylon rope? I know I wouldn't. And here's a skylight issue, and we've been talking a lot about that actually in the last couple of years. Holes more than 6 feet above a lower level must be protected. This opening could be made safe by using a guardrail around the skylight for when people are working up there. You can get a temporary guardrail system for that as well. And then also an option is the engineered protective covers that go over skylights that can withstand the impact of human falling on top of it without actually falling through. Floor holes, this one is improperly covered. Remember to cover completely and securely, and if no cover, you can guard the area with a guardrail system. And remember about your covers on holes, does it have to be marked? Yes, it does. What does it have to be marked with? Words, either hole or cover. You got to let people know what's underneath that sheet of plywood that's been secured. Concrete forms and rebar. Use personal fall arrest system when working on formwork or rebar. Cover or cap protruding rebar. We also see when doing concrete and rebar kind of systems like this, people using what we call positioning systems. This includes your full body harness, but also short lanyards that prevent you from falling any more than 2 feet, keeps you in touch with the work that you're actually doing. It eliminates that longer fall on that longer 6-foot or more lanyard, and basically secures that worker to the face of wherever he is working on that rebar system. Excavations, a lot of people focus on, of course, the excavation itself, the trench, the shoring, the shielding, whatever the case may be as far as protective systems inside the trench. But a lot of people don't actually do anything regarding the top of the trench from a fall protection standpoint. So one of the things that OSHA has written right into their regulations is that some measure to prevent people from falling into that trench must be taken if that trench is obscured by any kind of barrier from any kind of visual observation. So if you have buildings, other structures, shrubbery, something like that, that's actually obscuring that trench from someone who is walking up close to it, that whole trench system has to be guarded from falls. And roofs are probably the thing that we see most often, especially in residential construction. And I'm sure that any of us driving around the Metroplex here in Texas could probably see this on residential construction, where we might have contractors up on roofs doing the roofing work, and at least to the naked eye, we don't see the fall protection that really should be there. If you work on roofs and can fall more than 6 feet, you must be protected. Wall openings, a lot of times with the higher rise construction, apartment buildings, dormitories on campuses, office buildings, that sort of thing. You will see these door and window openings in the sides of the walls. And these have to be protected until those fixtures are actually installed. These must be protected as if it's an open side, which in fact it is. So good work practices. Perform work at ground level if possible. I remember in the old days, they used to actually do residential roofing where they would actually construct a lot of the roof while up on the roof, whereas now they're putting all of that together on ground level and then craning that roof right up onto the plumb-and-lined existing structure. So it eliminated a lot of that work that was being done at height, because all of that work's down on the ground and then just lifted into place. Tether or restrain workers so they can't reach the edge. A lot of people call this using a dog leash system. It's basically a restraint system. If I were to walk over near the edge of this stage and I had a proper restraint system on attached to a point behind me somewhere and it was adjusted properly, I could never even reach the edge of that stage in order to fall off. That's what's called a restraint system. Use conventional fall protection, such as your guardrails, safety nets, or PFAS, the big three. We can also do things like designate and use safety monitors. Now, this is one of the options for fall protection compliance. It is the less desirable of all of the systems because there's no actual thing that is either going to keep the person from falling over the edge or to restrain the person. So it's neither a fall prevention nor a fall protection as if he fell and we saved it like with a PFAS or a safety net. This is simply a safety monitor who is warning people when they're getting too close to the edge or when they're about to trip over something like that. Which, used in conjunction with other fall protection methods, can be used effectively, but I would always discourage the use of safety monitors on their own because typically they really don't prevent anything. Employers should provide fall protection training. Again, sharpening the axe for 5 hours. The training is to teach employees how to recognize hazards and how to minimize the hazards. Training should cover things like the fall hazards that are going to be at that particular job site, fall protection systems that are going to be in use at your job site, and also use of any fall protection devices. I'll harken back to the slide Shane showed us with the fall protection system in place, but apparently not enough training happened to teach them how to use it properly, and therefore we had a slack horizontal line and so on. All right, so when you're doing a training session like this, even a short one like this, what we do is then review so that we reinforce what we've just done. Well, how do we review this? We review it by restating the original enabling learning objectives, the ELOs. So by restating it, we put everything in the past tense. In this module, we, and then these are the 4 ELOs restated in the past tense. We listed the 3 methods of fall protection. We stated the main criteria. We discussed the best work practices, and we described the components of a well-designed training program. But I want to add one more thing to the training program part because training is my business. One piece of training is never enough. You have to reinforce that with a continuous cycle of training, a continuity of training. I would rather have you do 15 minutes this week and 15 minutes every week thereafter than have you in a class for 8 hours and then not see you again for the next 5 years. It's that reinforcement that builds skill. It's the reinforcement that builds competency. You can't do it all in one time. How many people crammed for a final exam sometime in their life? It could have been middle school, it could have been high school, it could have been college. We all crammed for that final exam. We passed the final exam. And then a week later, how much did we remember of the final exam? Yeah. Any training that you take today, if you do not reinforce it sometime in the next year, 1 year from now, you will have lost 90% of everything you did today. 90%. That's like not having the training at all. So take the training today, take the training this week, participate in the stand down, but don't make this a one-time shot. Give it your all the time, every day, always reinforce, do repetitive training, build that skill set, build the competency, and you're going to save some lives. Thanks. Any questions? Any questions? Melissa, you have a question?
How many fall protection classes does the university offer on a regular basis?
Okay, Melissa's question was how many fall protection classes does the university, you're talking about the OSHA Ed Center at University of Texas at Arlington, offer on a regular basis? We average actually about 4 to 5 fall protection courses a month. And that's quite a bit, but that's across Region 6. So Region 6 being Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, we do 4 to 5. Now, there are other OSHA Ed centers as well that I'd like to mention. The Texas A&M TEACS program, of course, has a very good OSHA Ed center as well. They do fall protection classes. The new consortium down in southern Louisiana, which includes LSU, also does some fall protection classes. There's a lot of resources that I'll talk about after Josh's presentation that you can go to. I think all of us come at this from the same kind of position, is that we indeed want to save lives, and if we can do that by referring people to any kind of resource out there, not just ours, but any other kind of resource out there to try to get the word out, to try to address it in whatever manner you needed to present to your employees, that's the service to the community that we believe in. Recently we did a special day. It was called OSHA Worker Memorial Day, and it was a day set aside every year, April 28th, to commemorate those workers and their families and everyone else involved who had lost their lives. We did a series of, how many seminars was it, guys? 28 one-day seminars all across Region 6. They were free of charge for everyone, and we actually trained 595 students across Region 6. And interestingly enough, we, out of all of those seminars, 8 of those seminars, I believe it was 8 of those seminars were about fall hazards in construction. That was requested by a lot of the OSHA area offices and a lot of our host site organizations. So we had 8 of those that were fall arrest for construction. And out of that, we had, or attending those, we had 208 people attend those fall arrest seminars. Now, 208 people doesn't sound like a lot, but in fact, you think about that exponential growth or the multiplication factor, or however you want to describe it, those 208 people got that fall hazard awareness course that day, and I'm sure that they didn't keep their mouths shut after that. I think they probably went back and told at least one person, and probably, because I know they had good experience with us and all of our instructors, they probably told more than one person. So now you're doubling, you're tripling, you're quadrupling. It's an exponential transfer of that information. So how many did we really touch? How many companies did we really touch with that? And that's what happens when we do something like this stand down this week. The word's going to get out. Not only on the work site, but that'll transfer to stuff at home. So when you're hanging your Christmas lights this year, and you're suspending your body over the edge of the eave on your house, and you're 15 feet off the ground, think about today. You know, get a big ladder, tie it off at the top, or hire somebody else that's a professional to do it better. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
I think we really concentrate on our job hazard analysis, especially no matter what the subject is, but especially fall safety now, being a stand down. There's our direction with our contracting services, and you've taught us that as well as OSHA rules. But I think we should take a better look at these job hazard analysis. Don't take them as they're there, they wrote them up, and make sure these guys are getting in a group together and having this discussion together and not separated and not listening to what's going on every morning.
That's a great comment, and for those of you at home or at work that didn't hear it, the comment was that we should be paying more attention and making the job hazard analysis that we do on a job site one of the, like say, cornerstones or centerpieces of our, not only our overall planning, but just of the daily job safety briefings that we do. And getting all the workers together and go through that JHA, and there are different acronyms that apply to the different kind of thing we're talking about, but basically it's analyzing or identifying and assessing or analyzing the hazards that are on that job site, and going top to bottom, every part of that job site where a hazard might exist, be identified in your job hazard analysis, and then everybody on that job site get together as a team on, let's say, a job safety briefing on a daily basis and go through that. I think is very huge in keeping the level of awareness up out on the job site on a daily basis. Absolutely. It's such an important part of your planning process. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question. A question I get into some regular sometimes over this. When you're in a scissor lift, you still require to wear the full arrest.
Okay, the question was, if you are in a scissor lift, and I'm going to assume everybody knows what that is, do you have to have, let's say, a personal fall arrest system in place, so a full body harness and a lanyard attached to the anchor point on that scissor lift? The answer to that is not according to the OSHA regulations. Okay, you do not have to if that scissor lift is equipped with a proper guardrail system. If it's not equipped with the proper guardrail system, and that includes the actual gate that closes behind them, then you must be protected in one of the other ways, preferably, of course, the personal fall arrest system. As a matter of fact, I think they call that out, that a full body harness and lanyard to an anchor point must be used. So it's all about that guardrail system. Now, that's OSHA. That's federal OSHA. Okay, don't forget where you work, because I used to do a lot of training with the Army Corps of Engineers. And in their EM 385-1-1 Safety and Health Manual, that a lot of folks, and besides the Corps of Engineers, a lot of the folks that work on their job sites have to go by that standard as well as the OSHA standard. They actually call out for personal fall arrest system, even with a full guardrail system on the scissor lift. So don't ignore your local or organizational safety regulations. Just because OSHA says this, you may be in a location. It might be a state that has a state plan. It may be an organization like Corps of Engineers, for example, or even your own organization. It might be a construction company that says, you know what, anybody on our job site, and that includes our subcontractors, vendors, whoever, has to follow these rules. Above and beyond what OSHA says. Remember, OSHA standards are what? The minimum. And many times we want to go beyond the minimum to make sure that we keep our people safe and we save lives. So always be aware of that. That was a great question. Thank you. Go ahead.
Now the anchor points that stand like 5,000 pounds per person, does that have to be installed by an engineer?
Okay, if it is already a pre-engineered anchor point, then no, it doesn't have to be installed by an engineer. It can be installed by and supervised by your competent person. But if it's something that you're fabricating from something that you sketched out on a napkin or had an idea for, then yeah, registered professional engineer is your best bet for certifying, and basically evaluating and calling that a good anchor point. Yeah. Good questions, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, it is my profound pleasure to introduce to you the Assistant Regional Administrator for Cooperative and State Programs from the Dallas Regional Office here in, or Dallas OSHA Regional Office, Mr. Josh Fletcher. Your stuff. I didn't do this, but you can.
and get to do this. Cool. Thank you, sir. What a wonderful event. Events like this get me really excited. I always want to thank everyone. I have to start out with thanking the University of Texas at Arlington, Matt and Melissa, their staff, the IT folks that put this event together. He wasn't lying when he said they had 2 weeks to do it, and we do appreciate that. Thank you for being our partners in this effort. Thank you for joining with us in launching this National Fall Stand Down that we're going to talk about. I always want to talk about the workers, the meaning of why we're here today. I'm going to present some data, and it's going to be very sombering data. It's going to be data of what the industry has done, what the industry has performed, and the fatal facts of that industry. But I first want to talk about the speakers that we've had here today. I have to thank Shane Morrow of Balfour Beatty Construction. Presentation he gave, he brings 25 plus years of safety and health experience in the construction industry. A valuable tool, a valuable asset, provides very great insight into what's going on in that industry, what we need to do to improve that industry, the culture behind the industry. So I have to thank Shane for coming out. I want to thank all of the other OSHA folks that participated today, Mr. Rector from the Fort Worth area office. I hope no one has ever had to deal with the victims or the next of kin of a fatal accident that's occurred at any of your job sites. Those fatal investigations that he was speaking of, those are real events. And I can tell you from experience, it's never fun to deal with the next of kin. It's so demoralizing to realize that someone's loved one is not coming home at the end of the day. Father, that someone's son is not going to make it home at the end of the day. And that's why we're all here. My last thank you guys for attending here today. You're taking the proactive approach to come to events like this, to come and get information like we're presenting, the folks at home as well, and getting the facts and getting the information that you can take back to your job sites, you can take back to your workers, and that we can one day hopefully prevent accidents and injuries and preventable accidents like we've talked about today, and keep people and send them home at the end of the day the same way they came. So I thank every one of you for being here today. And as Matt mentioned earlier, there's a goal of every presentation that we come. The overall goal of this seminar is that hopefully one of you will take information back to your work site, take information back to your job site, implement something that you learned, and hopefully one day it'll save someone's life. That's the overall goal. I hope that you take data from this presentation, take it back to your work sites and your job sites, present it to someone, and then hopefully one day it will save someone's life. So let's get started. I want to talk about Region 6 and what Region 6 compromises on. A lot of you at home may not be from Region 6, so we're going to talk about Region 6 specifically. We have 4 federal states in Region 6, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. This is how we're broken down. We also have a state plan state in New Mexico. Across the country, for you that may not be in Region 6, there's 10 regional offices across the country from East Coast to West Coast. You can go to our website, find what local area office is closest to you for the resources that you can get at those area offices and that you can take back to your sites. In Region 6, we have several area offices. We cover roughly 500,000 square miles of territory. So we definitely have our work cut out for us, but we're making strides every day and making sure everyone gets to go home at the end of the day the same way they came, providing a safe, good job for everyone. I'm going to give you this. These are going to be archived onto the UTA website, so I want to give you the information that you can reach out to your local area offices and reach out to the compliance assistant specialists that we have embedded in those offices. Reach out to the area directors. Build those partnerships and those relationships with OSHA. Become partners in these campaigns that we initiate, these kickoffs that we initiate, and partner with us to make sure that we can send everybody home at the end of the day the same way they came. So the overview of the presentation, what are we going to discuss? I'm going to build upon what Mr. Harbin spoke about earlier. We're going to talk about some of the national statistics. What are we seeing across all industries? This particular stand down isn't focused solely on construction, although it has been somewhat heavy today on construction because we do experience a very high volume of fatalities in that industry. We're encouraging anyone in any industry to participate in this stand down. It doesn't matter whether you're in general industry, manufacturing, oil and gas, construction. Anytime you can take part of your day to increase the knowledge of your workers, identify hazards, and possibly prevent a fall from occurring, it's a success. So no matter what industry you're in, we encourage you to participate. We're going to talk about the national statistics that's going to cover all industries. Then we're going to break those down a little further and talk about the construction-specific statistics. Then we're going to briefly talk about the frequently cited standards that we have here in OSHA. Most of you here already know what those standards are going to be. It seems like they never change. Our top 5 rarely ever change. They may jockey positions on who's going to be number 1 or 2 this year, but for the most part, they're always the same. We're going to talk briefly about our inspection activities, what we're doing from an OSHA perspective on the enforcement side to hopefully curtail the fatalities that are occurring in our workplaces. Then, of course, we're going to talk about the national campaign. The reason that we're all here, we're kicking off this fall Stand Down campaign. What you can do, how you can help, how you can partner with us to affect this industry, to affect all industries, and cut down on fatal falls. And then we're going to talk about some of the cooperative programs. I work in cooperative and state programs here in Region 6, and I would guess we have many programs that many of you may not be familiar with that can be of assistance to you, that are very reasonable, and they can come out and provide an adequate service for you to provide safety and health to your workers. So let's talk about the number of fatal work injuries that occur in the United States. We threw together a map here to illustrate the number of fatal workplace injuries in 2012. It's very sombering data. It's just a number on the screen, but when we take a hardcore look at it, it's a person. It's someone's father, it's someone's son, it's a mother, it's a daughter. It's someone that didn't get to go home at the end of the day. Each one of these numbers illustrates someone that didn't get to go home at the end of the day. And we're all here taking a proactive approach to hopefully one day make sure that we can reduce all of these numbers and get them to 0. That's the goal. Take a look at Region 6 here. Obviously, we can see that Texas has one of the highest fatality rates in the entire country. As you might expect, a lot of the work that goes on here in the state of Texas may correlate to that. Our other states, it's color-coded depending upon whether there was no change, whether there was a decrease in the number of fatalities in 2012, or there was an increase in the number of fatalities in 2012. Next, we're going to talk about the fatal occupational injuries by major event in 2012. And as you can see, this is industry-wide, so it's not construction-specific. It's across all industries, manufacturing, general industry, oil and gas, construction, across all workplace injuries in 2012. And you can see falls, slips, and trips accounted for 15% of all the fatal injuries. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but when you break it down and you take a look at the roughly 4,600 fatal events last year, 15% of those were related to falls. And I can tell you today, and it's not a secret to anyone, falls are the leading cause of death in the construction industry. We're all well aware of that, and that's what we're here today for, is to take an effort to decrease that number. Fatal injuries involving foreign-born workers. Outside of the 4,600, we're going to take a look at the number of workers that were foreign-born workers, a total of 824 from their respective countries. And this is what it breaks down to. Obviously, as a lot of these correlate to the very first map that I illustrated, the 536 workers that passed here in the state of Texas, you can take a look at the demographics that occur and how those are broken down. It's very sombering. It goes back to some of the information that's been presented all day. Plan, provide, train. We want to make sure we plan the job, provide the right equipment, and train our employees. When you're training your employees, as Matt mentioned, they have to be proficient in the language that you're speaking to them. You have to make sure that they're understanding what you're teaching. You have to follow through with that. Make sure at the end of the day they understand the material that you are presenting. Matt also mentioned fatal falls at the height of fatal falls. It's kind of ironic that we actually have this in here today, and he was talking about the stage. You at home can't see how high the stage is. I would guess it to be probably 4 feet. And a lot of times we talk about the distance of these fatal falls and how high do you have to be. And a lot of times you read about the stories of the 25, 35, 45 feet, people falling. But it can occur as little as 6 feet, less than 6 feet from the first rung of a step ladder. It can occur. So this bar graph is going to break down the percent of fatal falls to the lower level. It's going to be by a height. And you take a look at 10% of the total 570 falls that occurred, 57 of them was less than 6 feet. Less than 6 feet. I would imagine that just about every one of those, they never thought they would fall from less than 6 feet. But it can happen. It happens every day. It happens every week. It happens every month. Focus on these areas. And obviously, the higher you go sometimes, it may not correlate with the greatest chance to fall. Falls occur from all different heights. It doesn't matter where you're at. You need to make sure you're planning the job, providing the right equipment, training your employees for whatever they may be doing. Let's take a look at the falls resulting in a fatality from the lower level by state. The top three, Texas had roughly 536 from the map that we presented earlier. We're going to break that down now into the number of falls that occurred in the state of Texas. So the 500 that occurred in the state of Texas, 10% of them are falls. So we're currently in the state of Texas, we're running about 10%. I will tell you, outside the state of Texas in Region 6, our other 3 states in combined, we're running about 14 to 15%. So falls still is the leading cause of death in the industry for us as well. Height of the fall, the previous bar graph was the height of the fall across all industries. I now want to break that down into the height of the fall in the construction industry. It very closely correlates. There were 225 falls to the lower level in the construction industry. We take a look at where they were occurring. Of the 225, less than 12 of them were less than 6 feet. Less than 6 feet. And again, I hate presenting presentations a lot of times with numbers and with data because sometimes it doesn't mean a lot. But I want to emphasize that these are all individuals that didn't get to go home at the end of the day. And that fatality occurred in an avoidable accident. It could have been prevented. There's something that could have been done that would allow them to go home at the end of the day to their loved ones. So are we doing a good job? You as safety and health professionals at home and here today, we are doing a good job. This chart's going to illustrate that we are making strides in the safety and health industry. You take a look back in 1970, roughly 18 fatal work injuries occurred per 100,000 workers. 18 per 100,000 workers. Since 1970, whenever we started OSHA and we started doing enforcement inspections, developing resources and cooperative programs for employers, take a look at the trend that has occurred for the fatal rate of 100,000 workers. We're down to 3.6 now in 2012. So it has decreased significantly since 18 back in 1970, but our job is not done. At the end of the day, if one person doesn't get to go home, our job is not done. So we have made great strides. I don't want to be the browbeater today and tell everyone they're not doing a good job, because we are doing a good job. We've got to do a better job, and then we've got to do a better job and a better job. So we are making strides. We are reducing the fatal injuries per 100,000 workers, but we have a ways to go, and we're going to get there. We're going to come up together. We're going to partner together. We're going to come up with new programs. We're going to come up with ways to make sure at the end of the day, workers get to go home. Let's talk about the standards that we're citing. As you might imagine, the standards typically remain the same. Fall prevention, our 501b1 series are the top cited standards, year in and year out typically. The others may jockey for position. Some signs hazard communication, they're in a race with scaffolding and respiratory protection and electrical wiring and methods. In the construction industry, we can always guess the focus score, the falls, the scaffolding caught between struck behind are the leading cause of death in the construction industry, but they also correlate closely with the standards that we cite. In the construction industry, if you're in the construction industry and you're going back to one of your job sites and you're going to take the information that we present today and you're going to instruct people at the job site, focus on these main 4 areas. This is where the majority of the injuries and the illnesses and the fatalities occur in the construction industry. Let's talk about the inspections that we're conducting in the last, give or take, 6 years. Our inspections have been somewhat steady, so we are out there in the enforcement, making a difference. We are trying to educate employers whenever we do these inspections on the importance of these protective measures, on the importance of partnering with us and coming up with creative ways and ideas. Technology improves every year. We all have smartphones that we carry around. We check emails on a daily basis. The same thing's occurring in the safety and health industry. They're making improvements every day to the tools that we use, to the methods that we use. So use technology to your advantage. Also want to talk about the average current penalty per serious violation. Quick bar graph here to show what we've done in the industry as far as our penalties per serious violation. They somewhat increased in 2011 due to a penalty change in our policy. So that correlates to that. And let's talk about one we're all here. The most important thing to take back to your job sites at the end of the day is 3 simple steps. You've heard everyone here talk about them in their presentations. I've said it countless times during this presentation. There's 3 things that you take back at the end of the day: plan, provide, train. Plan your jobs. Make sure your employees know where they're going. Make sure they know what job site they're going to, what they may encounter, what they may not encounter. Some of the hidden obstacles that they may face. And we've listened to numerous presentations today that talk about planning the job. And Shane was talking about now installing anchors into their concrete pillars and planning that out. That takes planning well in advance. That's not something that occurs the week prior to that concrete being poured. It occurs weeks, months, probably even years, if I had to guess, to these buildings being built and what's going on. Whenever you plan that project, you know what you're going to run into. You know what your workers are going to need. So you got to provide what they're going to need to make sure they can adequately protect themselves at the end of the day. Provide them the new technology. Provide them the easy means, the straightforward means to go out and protect themselves that will allow them to go home at the end of the day. We had a question earlier about JSAs. JSAs relate closely to this system. In your JSAs, you should take a look and see what that job's going to call for, what you need to provide. Make sure your employees are trained on what that JSA or what they're going to be encountering for that day. And of course, the last one is train your employees, train your workers on what is appropriate, what they need to use, how they need to utilize it, how to utilize it properly. And as we mentioned earlier, you got to follow up with these guys. Follow up with them. Make sure that they know how to do it. Make sure they can demonstrate that they know how to do it correctly. Make sure that you're following through, building that relationship with those workers to where they know that you have a vested interest in their health and well-being at the end of the day. The National Safety Stand-Down, that's the kickoff that we're here for today. It's going to run all week long, June 2nd through the 6th of this week. The goal is very straightforward. Stop falls, save lives. Very straightforward. Stop falls, save lives. If you stop a fall, more than likely you just saved a life. And that's the goal at the end of the day. Fall hazards and fall prevention. You got to identify fall hazards. You got to provide fall prevention. You got to give the necessary resources to your employees at the end of the day to make sure that they can do that for themselves. The stand down itself, we have a website. I've included the link at the bottom of the page. So once these are archived onto the University of Texas and onto the system, you can go to these websites, you can pull these resources, you can register for the events that we're encouraging you to have at your work sites. It has tons of resources. And also on the website, you can print a certification of participation. You can put in a few pieces of information and you can print a certified document that shows that you've participated and you have partnered with OSHA in this important matter, and you've participated in such an event. Some of the campaign resources, these 3 websites have also been created. We've partnered with NIOSH, part of the CDC, obviously the OSHA website, and then we have a website specifically dedicated to this campaign, to this kickoff, June 2nd through the 6th. Hold events at your job sites, take this information back, provide it to your workers, allow your workers the opportunity to talk about fall prevention, to talk about fall training, to see what you can learn. At the end of the day, if we're not learning, we're not progressing. We want to progress at the end of the day to make sure that we're all moving forward in the safety and health business, and we're making sure that everybody gets to go home at the end of the day. Our national office has done a fantastic job of developing a construction-specific OSHA webpage. It has great training tools, it has e-tools, it has great information that you can access that is specific to the construction industry. It's a great resource to take advantage of. Visit that webpage as often as you can. It does have great resources and great information. And of course, here in Region 6 and many of you throughout the country, wherever you may be, the weather is starting to get hot, and I would be amiss if I walked off the stage and didn't mention to you that we're in our 5th year now of the heat stress campaign. I still haven't wrapped my head around the fact that everyone knows it's getting hot. We know what the phrase is, water, rest, shade. We have to provide our workers with water. We have to provide them a place to rest in the shade. Water, rest, and shade. And still, each year, we experience fatalities across the country for injuries, for heat stress and heat stroke that can be easily prevented. So here's some data. Drink water every 15 minutes. Make sure you provide your workers a cool, shaded place to rest during the breaks. Depending upon where you're at, wear hat and light-colored clothing. There was a study done not too long ago about a company that switched their hard hats from a blue hard hat to a white hard hat. It increased the overall body core temperature to like 7 degrees. So take that into consideration as you're planning your job sites, as you make that next big purchase on hard hats or company apparel, whatever it may be. Make sure you instruct your workers on to look out for one another. instructing them on what signs they need to look out for in their coworkers, some of the signs and symptoms of heat illness, and make sure they know what to do in the case of an emergency. One of the most important things that sometimes we forget. At the end, I want to wrap up and kind of talk to everyone about some of the popular programs that we do have in Region 6. Many of them you may or may not be aware of. Our voluntary protection program, we typically reserve that program for the companies that have well-established elite safety and health programs. They have the programs in place. They have injury and illness prevention programs already in place, and their workers are following it. We currently have about 2,400 participants in our VPP program across the country. If you are interested, I encourage you to take a look at the OSHA webpage. All of these programs are explained in great detail. I'm not going to explain each one of them in great detail, but they are out there for you to take advantage of. Our SHARPS program, the Safety and Health Awards Recognition Program, is for our small employers that need assistance but have established safety and health programs. This program is facilitated by our consultation programs in each of the states. Our consultation program provides small businesses, small business owners with free consultative services in the safety and health arena. So if you have a small business, if you are a small business owner, take advantage of the consultation program in your area. They provide free safety and health services to you. The OSHA Challenge program is typically a program that is utilized by our employers that are in the process of applying for the VPP program. And of course, we have partnerships and alliances. Much like this event, you're partnering with us. If you're looking to establish a more formal partnership, whether it be job site specific, something such as that, we have formal partnership programs for that type of application. And then we have alliance programs as well for those worker safety groups and for the worker, some of the ones that I know of. We develop best practices, we develop safety and health data to present to the industry, and we come up with new and creative solutions. So we do have many cooperative programs that are available to you throughout the country. Take advantage, utilize them. They're a great resource that provide great information. And at the end of the day, they can hopefully give you a tool that will allow you to go back and implement an improved policy or program in your workplace. With that, we have one more presentation left, and it is my distinguished honor to introduce the wonderful and the great Kerr.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And to tag on to Josh's response, what we're after is cultural change in organizations. And it starts at the top. Leadership's got to, not to be redundant, lead the way and walk the talk. If they don't, then the culture in an organization is never going to change. I remember about 6 years ago, in the first company that I worked for a short period of time here in the great state of Texas. And as we say, I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as I could. The culture there, and I'll say one portion of it, was about PPE, personal protective equipment. And coming from my background, of course, I was all about that, but I'd never seen it so ingrained in an organization as it was for this particular organization. Now, this is an organization that at the time had about 46 divisions across North America, and that included divisions within Canada and Mexico as well, and about 800 or so employees. And what they did was they responded, among other things they responded to railroad derailments, high hazard ops, and so on, hazardous materials and the like. Well, their standard policy for their minimum level of PPE on any job site they ever went to was hard hat, eye protection, high visibility vest, and steel-toed safety boots on every job site they ever went to. Now, that's not such a stretch. We all have that sort of thing, but this even applied back at their shop, back where their offices and apparatus floor were, where they parked their trucks and their backhoes and their side boom cats and their cranes and everything else. If you stepped from the office onto that apparatus floor, guess what you had on? You had it all on. All the way from the president of the company to the guy that just got hired and just went through the orientation. And it was ingrained in that organization. And if somebody accidentally forgot, which I never saw anybody that was there for any amount of time ever forget, but I experienced it. I went out to a job site after Hurricane Ike, and I stepped out on my rental car because I flew down there. Stepped out on my rental car, and I was about 2 weeks into the job. And my hard hat was in the seat of the car. And I stepped out of the car. I didn't get 5 feet from the car when one of the operators of one of the side boom cats got my attention, and I looked at him. I thought he was waving to say hi. He was pointing to his head. So he was acting as my brother's keeper. He was looking out for everybody on that job site, and especially that new guy getting out of that rental car without his hard hat on. He didn't let me even get close to that job site before he stopped me, and I turned around and went back. I think I bought a lot of ice cream later that day. But it's a cultural change, and it starts with the leadership, and that's what we're after. Okay, really quickly, and we'll wrap it up and get to a short Q&A. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't provide you here and you at home or at the office with some places to go for some resources, because we're all about taking some time this week and then forever after in doing some training and some reinforcement and developing that skill set. So let's go through this real quickly. I don't like how this actually does. I'm going to do this for you guys. This is actually a screenshot of OSHA.gov. If you've never been there before, go there now. Well, not now, but after we're done here, we should go there. And there's so many resources at OSHA.gov, and they're free, and you can use them for your training, for any kind of events you hold, for any kind of documents you want to produce, handouts, quick takes cards, any of that sort of thing. There's a lot of information and resources, training aids here that you need to go find. So this is the home page, and you can see that right on their home page right now, in that top left corner, where they have the highlights, and there's, I think, 7 or 8 different highlights on that particular scrolling screen. There's our National Safety Stand Down. When you click on that, it takes you to this page, and you can see across the bottom there, hello, go back. You can see across the bottom there we have the home page where we are now, Then we have resources, events, certificate of participation, which Josh just mentioned, and then a share with us, which you can actually share by going to Facebook or tweeting or any of those other things young people do that I have no idea what it means. But there's a lot of ways to share your personal stories, your company stories, with all the rest of us in the future. When you click on Resources tab, it takes you to this page. We have different kinds of fall prevention resources there. The stand-down poster, educational materials and resources, fact sheets, training materials, including the OSHA Fall Prevention Training Guide, a lesson plan for employers, stop construction falls, temporary, an actual fatality assessment control evaluation, what we call a FACE, where you can actually learn from others' investigations. And also some really nice fall prevention videos that have been recently produced that are short and sweet, but really get the point across. They're great for a quick meeting where you can take one of these. They're down here in the bottom corner down here for floor openings, fixed scaffolds, bridge decking, re-roofing, and so on, where you can take those, make it part of a coffee and donuts safety training break. You can use them this week, and it would be a really nice way to reinforce some of the concepts we're talking about. If you go on the Events tab on that fall stand-down page, the first thing you get to is the map of the United States, and you can actually click on the different regions. So for those of you at home, you're not here in Region 6. If you're not here in Region 6, there are events actually going on this week that are publicized both on the OSHA.gov website in general, but also if you click on one of these regions, it will list the events happening in your region. Here's the certificate of participation page. This is where you learn how to actually submit your information about your participation in the safety stand-down or the fall prevention stand-down, and you can actually get a certificate for the participation of yourself or your organization. And then here's the share page that I mentioned, tweeting, because we actually already have quite a few latest tweets on how people are observing the fall prevention stand-down, and you can share that in a like manner or by any of the other parts of social media that we have available to us. Okay, then you get into, well, I need more stuff. I need PowerPoints, I need other videos, I need kind of manuals and handouts and things like that. If you go to the training tab on the OSHA homepage, and that's right up there, this is what you come to, the OSHA training courses, materials, and resources. I would encourage anybody to go here, investigate it, just kind of like be an explorer and get into that particular web page. You can find so many materials that you can take advantage of, download yourselves, print out yourselves. And again, it's all free, guys. We've paid for it through our tax dollars. Let's take advantage of it. It's there. A lot of excellent materials are there, suitable for your particular organization, customizable for your organization. I encourage you to go there. Here's another part of this. As you drill down into that particular page, you can get to the safety and health training resources. You can get in the lower corner down here to the grantee developed materials. This refers to the Susan Harwood grant that we basically apply for, and a lot of us receive every year, it's a particular targeted topic or industry or audience, and all of the materials developed under the Susan Harwood grant are available from this location right here, and you can use it in your organization. We also have trainer materials down here. This would refer mostly to outreach trainers, but anybody can use the materials, as I'll show you here in a second. We have a video for loan center. It's a resource center loan program. We have OSHA developed materials here, especially this first bullet, the training and reference materials library. We also have OSHA e-tools down here at the bottom, and other training resources from other resources organizations and so on throughout the country, such as CDC, NIOSH, and the like. I mentioned the outreach trainer kinds of resources, and again, these can be used by anybody. It's not just outreach trainers. It doesn't take a special password to get to this. Just click on that information. You can come up to pages like this that have all of these PowerPoint programs related to different kinds of hazards or topics that you have. And since we're talking fall protection, here's your fall protection PowerPoint right here. You can download that and use that as well. Now, this is an actual page. If you drill down into the Susan Harwood grant program, you can actually get to the Harwood grant recipients' materials that were generated as part of that grant. I actually took a picture of the fall protection materials that are there. If you go by topic, go alphabetical, you can actually get to things like all of the fall protection materials that were generated under the Harwood grant program. You can go into here and look. And I actually looked at one specific one so you can see what's there, and you get to this. Here we have fall protection, but if you look closely, you're going to see not only PowerPoints, but you also have tests, introduction to OSHA materials, an instructor manual, and even the whole program in Spanish as well. So this is the kind of product that you'll get under that Harwood grant program that you guys can use within your own organization. I'm a big fan of the phrase, don't reinvent the wheel. This stuff's a lot of good information out there done by a lot of good people. You can adapt it to your own programs. Again, another part of the page. Again, that's under the training resources page. And then finally, I wouldn't be doing my job as director here without referring you also to our website, because here at PTA, Division for Enterprise Development, we actually have 12 different programs, the OSHA Ed Center being one of them, where we offer a lot of resources, both in the consulting and services side, as well as at the training side. And that's mostly what we do in the OSHA Ed Center, is the training side. And you can see we have different kinds of areas to go to. If you go to safety, health, and environmental, that's where you're going to find us at the OSHA Ed Center. This is a screenshot of the page that you see immediately upon clicking on environmental health and safety. You go to what we call our shared page, where we share it with the OSHA Ed Center. That's us here. We also have the Division for Fire and Safety, and we also have the Environmental Training Institute there. If you drill down into the OSHA Ed Center, this is the homepage shot of that. And if we scroll down the page, you get that. There's our stand-down material up at the top left, and you can see a lot of the other material here. So the next question I normally get is, what kind of courses do you do here? And we do 3 specific ones. The OSHA 3115 Fall Protection. It's 22 hours long. We take 3 days to present the material. Those are the kinds of topics that we address. It's a very standards-based course. The typical audience for that is going to be someone who supervises other people, a safety professional, a leader in an organization, owners of organizations. We also have the OSHA 7405 Fall Hazard Awareness for the construction industry. This is a 1-day seminar type. OSHA calls it a short course. The audience for this is going to be top to bottom, all through an organization, all the way to boots on the ground. Identifying fall hazards, analyzing fall hazards, preventing fall hazards, and also going over the OSHA resources that address fall hazards. It's a very overview type of awareness level, lifting kind of seminar. Then we also have what's called the Public Works Training Institute within our division. And we have what's called the PWTI 204 Fall Protection Awareness Course. It's 1 day. Now this is designed for the public sector employee. So anything out of our Public Works Training Institute is. That includes roads, utilities, buildings and facilities management, things like that. Topics include all of the hit parade, identification of all hazards and best practices, planning, and so on. But it's focused toward the public sector. Now, I mentioned utilities, roads, facilities, and so on, public sector employees. It also is focused on those contractors that work for the public sector, because they go hand in hand. You're working side by side with those people in the public sector, but you're a private contractor. This course is also designed for those contractors. So 3 main ones that we provide here at UTA. And of course, I want you to contact us. So contact information is there. You can always just Google UTA, OSHA, something like that. You're going to get to us. Okay. You have any questions on any of the stuff that I just presented? Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to invite Jack and Josh up on the stage, please. And Shane is back. You were hiding in the audience. Come on up. Okay, this is our formal question and answer session. Can I do this? Oh, sweet.
Or maybe not.
Oh, maybe I can't. I'm trying to mess with the equipment. All right, we'll step up one at a time. Does anybody have any questions for any of the 4 of us as we are here? You guys want to come over here? Everybody go that way. Any questions? We are here at your disposal. Ms. Ball.
Is there a regional emphasis program on falls and construction for Region 6?
Okay, the question was, is there a regional emphasis program for fall protection and construction for Region 6? Okay, I'll let Josh handle it.
It's not specific to falls, it's specific to construction in Region 6. So falls is obviously a component of that emphasis program, and we correlate it back to the main 4 hazards that we're identifying, the focus 4 hazards. It's not the only 4 that we have, but it is what we typically take a look at. But we do focus on falls at construction sites, and we do have a regional emphasis program that would incorporate those into that. It's not specific to falls, it's specific to construction, but it does incorporate falls.
Yes, sir.
Regarding barricades in the Dallas area, are we going to see OSHA out there helping us a little bit more with the people that are putting up barricades, the ones that really aren't official? People are just haphazardly putting up barricades in construction zones.
Okay, the question was, is OSHA going to take
A standard, or do you have somebody?
A more active role?
Yeah, do you have somebody in that department now?
Okay.
I'm not very familiar with that end of the world, but our company is back into the barricade business, and we have like buyers barricades, for instance. But we're seeing a lot of companies that they're just putting up barricades. I mean, it's.
Okay, so OSHA taking a role more in guidance for people that are putting up barricades around construction sites, that sort of thing?
I would say in that instance, it's no more than what we normally do on a regular inspection. Such as when my compliance officers are out driving around and they come into a work zone or something, what they're doing is they're actually looking at the signage that's out there, the cones, the way the traffic is actually being maneuvered away from the employees and everything like that. And what we're looking for is to make sure that everything is being followed in accordance with the MUTCD. That's really what we're looking for. And like I said, if there's something that we notice that's out of place, we'll stop and address it at that time.
Normally, our company doesn't have a problem. You know, when we're out going through the city, DFW area, I do see a lot of this going on where there's barricades that are up that, you know, you got people that are in buffer zones, really is what I'm addressing. And we see that almost on every side. It just runs a chill up my back. And of course, I'm familiar with the death that just happened in El Paso. Some of the people out there that we're aware of also, and hoping that would never happen again.
And we've had, actually, over the years, we've had quite a few up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area also.
Yes, sir.
Where we've actually had employees, you know, working in the work zones, being struck by traffic and everything. But again, when we go out there, we're looking at any of that. Like I say, what we're looking at is to make sure that all the signage is actually in place the way it's supposed to be. way the traffic is channelized away from the workers and everything. So like I said, what we're doing is we're making sure that they're following the MUTCD route.
Right. I've had a positive association with OSHA, even though what jobs you have came on and interviewed our employees and whatnot, but it's always been a positive thing happening. And myself, I've been involved in construction since the inception of OSHA. I'm 62 years old, and I've seen a lot of changes. And Josh talking about there, one of the guys talking about the belt that they had, and we were lucky to wrap ropes around us at one time, even in the unions. And we appreciate you sitting there for us.
Hopefully all this change you've seen for the better.
Absolutely. Now
That's great.
I'm retired.
Thank you, that's a good question. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to fix something that I didn't do before. I want to thank MSA for bringing their fall protection demonstration trailer out. You probably saw it as you were walking in from the parking lot. He may still be there, so take a walk by, see what kinds of things he's got on that particular demonstration trailer. It's an excellent piece of equipment, so many thanks to MSA for supporting this event. And I would like to thank all of you in the audience for coming out and showing your support and your concern for what is one of the more significant kinds of things we have in the construction industry that we really need to put even a sharper focus on this year and in the years to come. We want to drop those numbers and we want to save some lives. So appreciate you guys coming out. And for those of you who have tuned in from your home or your office or the hood of your truck at the construction site, thanks so much for tuning in. And for those of you who are looking at this several days from now on the archived link, thanks for doing that as well and taking the effort to join us and be involved in this kind of an important event. So with that said, thank you to Jack from the Fort Worth area office and to Josh from the regional office in Dallas and Judy up at the top. You started all this. Thank you, Judy. And then also Shane from Balfour Beatty showing that you can actually cooperate and collaborate between federal government and university system and the private sector and make it come out to be a really excellent kind of effort. So thanks to all of you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody and have a great day.